how about Jaquaski Tart?
Yeah,
I mean, this
that makes
guy
sense.
signed for the vet minimum. He's on a 1 year deal. He needs to prove that he can stay healthy, because when he does stay healthy, the defense plays at a really high level. And if he if he can stay healthy for an entire year, he could start getting millions of dollars in the future. He could get back into the 7, 8, 9, 10 million range, up there with Jimmy Ward. So he's a really good player, and he's making nothing this year because he plays 8 games a year. So,
And I was going to add on to what you just said. Does Jimmy Ward have something to prove? Not necessarily to us, but to the rest of the world.
ooh, I like that. I think he does. I think what Jimmy Ward is saying is in that interview is that he does. That people look at him as a decent safety, and he looks at himself as a top 5 safety in the league, and that's what he wants to prove. So he doesn't have to prove that. He wants to prove that, and I like that. I like that a lot.
Um, Speaking, I think since Maurice Hurst was mentioned, this is a bit of a reach, but what about Kevin Givens? I mean, he could be a solid backup, but he can also be a pretty good starter. I mean, he's got a lot of potential. Even DeMeco mentioned him.
Yeah, what's nice about like Kevin Givens, Ross Dwelly, they're in position. I think they're actually in the list of the other people, the ones that don't have much to prove. They don't have high expectations, and the bar is so low for what they're expected to do. If Kevin Givens can become a rotational pass rusher and give him 4 sacks, that would be great. If he could give him 8 sacks, that would be unreal. Found money. That's if Ross Dwelly gets 70 targets and can catch 50 of them, that would be unreal. I mean, not that he couldn't do it, but they're not expecting him to do that. I think those guys are the few that come into this season with no pressure. There's some pressure on Ross Dwelly. Let's how about Dwelly? Because there's no Jordan Reed this year. There's no Levine Toilolo. They did sign Michael Pruitt, but it seems like for the first time, the team has really given him a vote of confidence as the number 2 tight end, and he's in a contract year as well. So it's his opportunity to show that he's worth a second contract, which doesn't always come to former undrafted free agents. I guess Dwelly does have a lot to prove this year.
What about Kawan Williams?
K'Waun Williams, no doubt, man, absolutely. Another guy who's on a 1 year deal, who played about 8 games last year, and is it his birth? I think it's his birthday today. I saw someone say, "Wish K'Waun Williams a happy birthday." Yeah, tell him he's 30. It's like, gee, he just turned old in DB years. So yeah, he needs to prove that. Anytime a DB turns 30, he's got a lot to prove.
Oh, I got another one. Not as like I guess not as much as the other guys you mentioned, but what about say Mohamed Sanu or whoever is going for that third position or third
Oh
receiver
yeah, Mohamed
slot
Sanu,
position?
Jalen
man. If he
Hurd.
doesn't win this job and he gets cut again, that could be it for his career. Although it looks like he's working out really hard, and Des Bryant has taken notice. Have you guys noticed this? The Des Bryant thing?
No. What's the
Aaron, are
Des
you
Bryant
driving?
thing?
I caught him. Aaron, stop driving. Des Bryant was tweeting, was writing on Instagram at Mohamed Sanu, saying he looks like he's working really hard. You saw that, right? So something about Mohamed Sanu, it seems like he thinks he's going to get this job. Maybe Kyle Shanahan told him, "Look, man, we're going to lose Kendrick Bourne. We got a job here if you want it. You just got to work out harder than you ever have." Because really, the only competition for Mohamed Sanu, a former first-round pick, is Jawan Jennings, a 7th-round pick, and Jalen Hurd, who hasn't been healthy since the Nixon administration. So I think really Sanu looks like he's got a wide open opportunity here for big time targets and playing time. But he's got to prove it.
Yeah, Jalen Hurd. I think if he wants to stay in this team, he really has to prove. He really has to prove himself this year.
Oh my
And
God. He has to get healthy this year. If he's injured for the fourth, well, I guess the thing about these rookie contracts is there's no percentage in cutting you before you get to the end of it, and he's not worth anything in a trade. But how many years are they going to give him a spot on the team to be injured and cash checks to rehab? I mean, I don't know. That's a tough one. He's got a lot to prove, man. He has to prove that he's a football player and not a professional rehabilitator. Because right now, he's a professional rehabilitator. He's not actually been a professional football player except for about 2 weeks of his life.
Probably beating a dead horse here, but if Jimmy G gets hurt in practice in camp, we can cut him, right, and not suffer any losses of our cap. We can just lose the 2.5 million that we're
I don't know
the
about
dead
that,
money.
man. There's probably injury guarantees in his contract. I don't know about that. Can someone else
That's
If
answer
you
that?
look at that,
I don't know about
if you
that.
look at that tackle from the Broncos, right?
Yeah,
I wonder if Jimmy doesn't get his money because that tackle isn't getting any of his money.
I wonder. But didn't he injure himself away from the facility?
Yeah, but he would have got that money if he was at the facility.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, that's what I mean. What if Jimmy G gets hurt
yeah. That's
in
a good
Like
question.
practice?
I'm stressed if he's doing anything.
Yeah, they need Trey Lance to win the job as soon as possible because it seems to me that Jimmy Garoppolo is on the team, and you can say correctly because you just don't know what Trey Lance is going to give you yet. And Jimmy Garoppolo's had success, and if you get rid of him too soon and Trey Lance isn't ready, then you piss off the entire team and lose the team. But if Trey Lance looks ready, then you got to get Jimmy out of there. If he's shown enough, then he served his purpose. Is basically the thing. When Lance is ready, Jimmy has served his purpose, and there's no reason to split the locker room. Because to me, what you got to be careful of is what happened in Philly last year. Like Doug Peterson won a freaking Super Bowl. He was looked at as that guy, and then his quarterback got hurt. They went to another quarterback. They split the locker room. They couldn't decide which one they wanted. He got fired. And he got hired just 1 year before Kyle. And he won a freaking Super Bowl. The only one who ever won one for Philly. They fired him 3 years later. I'm not saying the Niners are going to fire Kyle, but if he had a Doug Peterson type year where they won 5 games, flip flap back and forth between quarterbacks, neither one played well, and he lost the locker room and split it, what would you, what, I mean, Jed might do something. I don't know. It may not be enough to just fire John Lynch. You guys might want to get rid of Kyle Shanahan at that point too. If next year's a freaking disaster, because where's the hope after that, right? I mean, no one here expects the Niners to win 5 games. But if that's what happens, if Jimmy plays terrible, if Trey Lance plays terrible, if the locker room split, God knows what could happen to Kyle Shanahan. He doesn't have a ring to fall back on. He just has his name.
Yeah, I think the only scenario that I see Trey Lance doing bad, outside of injury, would be the league figures out Kyle Shanahan's run offense,
And
and
I
then
don't
all of a
think that's
sudden
going to
that falls
happen.
apart.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that's gonna happen.
I'm with you. Because last year with Wentz, that team, the reason those quarterbacks sucked last year in Phillies because that team sucked. I saw them. The number one wide receiver in that team was Travis Fulgham. So that team
I
sucked.
don't
That
know who
offensive
that
line was
is.
terrible. Exactly.
What about Grant Cohn's quality control?
What about it?
Oh,
Oh, lot to prove. That's true. It does. Because
I mean,
honestly,
you came off a hot year where you kept Mac Jones from getting drafted by the Niners, and then you got Kyle to get more open and candid and talking more reckless. So
That's
you
true.
got to follow that up, man. You got a lot of work to do.
Well, I've done it. I've had a good offseason, but I got to say, I didn't push the right buttons last season. They only won 6 games, so I can't pat myself in the back too much.
how about the strength and conditioning staff?
Yeah, I mean, I think in the past when people would get hurt in training camp, Niner fans wouldn't really think anything about it. Or if I would make something about it and say this is bad, Niner fans would just kind of say like shut up, it's just one time. But now there's like a counter. You remember that South Park episode where they say the shit word like as many times as possible? There's a counter on the bottom left corner and they got to about 250. That's basically
Yeah.
where we're at with injuries and practice for the Niners. Like everyone wants to know who's the next one going to be, how long is he going to be out? Because it's a foregone conclusion at this point. So yeah, and I don't know who. Some people blame the players, some people blame the strength and conditioning staff, some people blame Kyle. All three. Some people blame the grass. Seriously. So there's some people that really don't like that grass. So, but still, injuries are injuries.
What
Speaking
about
of,
Jermichael Hasty?
sorry,
Did you notice that
Sorry.
Jimmy Ward was very complimentary of the training staff, as Bay Area baller points out in the Twitch?
Yeah.
He was very
Yeah.
complimentary. And
So that means that. Go ahead.
it
Sorry.
just seemed like he listed 8,000 things he does for recovery. It seems like with a lot of these places, the resources are there. It's either on the
Yeah.
player to use them or the head coach to emphasize them. But it seems like the Niners definitely have the resources. And Jimmy uses them.
Yeah, that kind of set me at ease, but then it also brings up the thing that you remarked on a couple weeks ago, saying that, well, maybe that guy is doing all the good stuff, the NHL guy, and Kyle's
Yeah.
just not listening.
I mean, it seems to me that the NHL guy can have all the right ideas. The players can use all the right resources, but if the practices are inherently intense with all that running and very little rest in a 90-minute period, there's only so much prevention you can do. Like maybe the nature of the practices across the board. Like, did you guys notice? Did you hear that report about the CFL, the Canadian Football League? Right, they canceled their league. They didn't play last year, and they came back this year. And the Saskatchewan Roughriders had 4 guys pop their Achilles in the same practice. You guys read this report?
God, no.
4 guys in the same practice. So I think that like head coaches around the country, around the world, professional head coaches need to kind of look at what they have deemed the best possible way to do these practices, because back in the day they were 3-hour practices, just like their 3-hour games. They were at the same pace as a football game, which is a lot of resting and standing around in a football game between drives, between quarters. Now practice is it's like CrossFit. You know what I'm saying? It's
All those
freaking
guys get
CrossFit.
injured all the time.
Yeah, I mean, it's just nonstop action. So, and I guess players like it because when you're 23, you can do it, you can get in and out. But I don't know. It seems like there's a lot of downside to it as well. Maybe less CTE, but more ACL, more Achilles. That's a rough trade-off.
I got a soccer dad who has his own physical therapy business or whatever, and he tells me that so many of the injuries come from CrossFit people.
Yep.
Like that's what keeps them in business.
That's amazing because it's just so strenuous on your body. And eventually, when you're exhausted, your form deteriorates and you start doing stuff wrong and you injure yourself. Yeah.
Do you think Dee Ford has anything to prove this year, or do you think the whole organization has just lost hope on him?
That's such a great question. I didn't write him down. I think I've written him off. It seems like if he does anything, he exceeds expectations. Literally anything.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, that's a good question. I guess it depends on how you look at him. I have no expectations for him.
When Dee Ford's on the field, like what I think Vish has said this before, when he's on the field, there is a difference in the pass rush. It is much better. But
yes,
he just can't stay on the field because he's probably going to break his back from a breeze of wind.
He's the ideal counterpart for Nick Bosa because Nick Bosa is a little like Justin Smith, and he's kind of like slow and relentless to the quarterback. He's not going to get there in 2 seconds the way Dee Ford will. And even if Dee Ford misses, the quarterback has to move, and then Nick Bosa's in his face. So they're a very good combination.
You always need 2 guys if you're going to rush 4 because definitely. One guy gets a double team and everybody else is singled up.
That's right. Yep, absolutely.
I don't think the Niners are expecting much from him. Like I think they're like, thanks for redoing your contract or whatever it was that he did, a few months ago. But I mean, they drafted Ibukam, right? That's their insurance policy.
Well, they picked up Ibukam, but if you look at Ibukam's pressure rate last year, so he had about 11.9% pressure rate on per snap. And if you look at Nick Bosa and Nick Bosa's limited snaps, Nick Bosa had like 12.2.
Yep.
So that's pretty good coming off your edges if you can get that pressure rate off both sides. Because Dee Ford in his limited playing last year was at 3.8%.
Do you have Dee Ford's numbers, or did you just say that in 2019?
That was from 2020. 2019.
No, 2020. It was because he limited play, but he only had 3.8%.
What about in 19? For
I'd have to look up the 19 numbers. I only have the 2020 numbers right now. Eric Armstead had like a 9.3%. Javon Kinlaw had 5.9%. DJ Jones 5.8%. Kevin Givens 5.1%.
See, that pressure stuff is so interesting to me because for me, every time Eric Armstead created pressure last year, it hurt the defense because he would just come in wildly from the edge. The quarterback would evade him and then be able to just chill on the perimeter, get outside the pocket, and make throws down the field every single time.
Do you think Armstead was trying to play hero ball where he would just like get out of character instead of just doing his job and keep contained? Like trying to make a play.
Hell yeah, he got paid. He knew the expectation was for him to get sacks, and he was going out of his way, hurting the defense to try to get sacks, in my opinion.
Because I remember that game against the Eagles where it was like, dude, contain the edge, and then you
please.
let Carson break out, you know?
Every single good play except for the last one at the end, the deep one to Fulgham, was Carson Wentz rolling to his right, and that was Armstead's side. It was the same thing in the Bills game with Josh Allen. Watch him break out to the right every single freaking time.
So do you see Armstead being left edge on obvious run plays,
yes,
and then him going DT?
Yes, you have to have him inside, and I think it's much better to have someone like Ebukam out on the edge, because even if he doesn't get to the quarterback, it's going to be much harder to break contain against Ebukam because he runs a 4.5. And he's almost like, will probably be at his best when the quarterback tries to leave the pocket, you know, which is kind of interesting. I mean, maybe in 2021, you want a guy like Ebukam, a guy who just keep the quarterback in the pocket, compress it, bull rush, and then if the guy tries to break out, just run him down. I think that's what Ebukam is going to be able to do. I'm not really worried about just push the pocket, keep the guy in there, and make him throw with bodies around him. You don't necessarily have to get a sack. The sacks will come. Just don't let him get out of the pocket. Make these kids play quarterback. Same goes to Trey Lance. If I was a defensive coordinator against Trey Lance, I would be telling my guys, like, chill on on rushing him. Like, yeah, you want to get a sack, and maybe you'll get a couple in this game, but do not let him out of the pocket. Make him play quarterback.
Yeah,
Make him play quarterback.
You got to figure too that they know that Shanahan's not going to want to put Trey at risk to run all the time, right? I mean, he's gone through that already, right, with RG3.
But I mean, Trey Lance's best plays as a rookie is what are going to be, most of them, when he breaks out of the pocket and ad-libs. Because that's when his athleticism will take over. That's when Josh Allen's at his best. Carson Wentz is at his best. He's going to look great doing that stuff, and it's stuff Jimmy can't do. So, I mean, the best thing to do with most of these young athletic quarterbacks is just Kyler Murray. Keep him in the freaking pocket and make him play quarterback. But you can't do that if Eric Armstead is just running in wildly like freaking Leroy Jenkins, if you know what I'm talking about. That's Armstead. It's like, all right, thanks a lot, man. No, you don't know what I'm talking about.
Wow reference.
Yes.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. So yeah, I think Ebukam's actually really important. Rushing the quarterback is so much. I think it's so much more important to keep the dude in the pocket these days. If you're going against Tom Brady, obviously you got to rush him. But if you're going against Josh Allen, keep him in the pocket. Carson Wentz, keep him in the pocket. Matthew Stafford, keep him in the pocket, even though he's older.
Is Matthew Stafford mobile? I haven't seen him. I'm not sure. I haven't seen him.
He can move his feet better than Jimmy. I'll tell you that.
He's mobile enough in the pocket.
He's mobile enough.
Did you guys mention DeMeco Ryans as?
Oh yeah, I have him written down. He's got so much to prove. He's got Fred Warner saying he's going to be a head coach soon. Okay, well, be a good coordinator first.
You know what's weird is I know he gets a lot of credit because he's an ex-player, but I remember hearing a lot of the same things about Saleh from the players when he first came in.
Yes.
A lot of them talked about how he just had this he commanded respect the way he talked to people, the way he handled people. You could tell like he endeared himself to them. So even though DeMeco might have that already, I think it is still like, well, we got to see how he does against some of the better offenses out there. So we'll see this year.
Yeah, we will. Cool, nice man in the comments says that's what you have to do with Russ, Lamar, Kyler. Contain them. Don't go for the sack. And it's interesting. I mean, especially in the NFC West, you got Russ and Kyler. You have to contain them and not necessarily go for the sack. So having someone like Eric Armstead rushing from the edge will ruin your defense against those two. Against Tom Brady, he'd be great. But that's not what you face in the NFC West. And having Ebukam should really help the Niners defense just in comparison to what it was last year. Also, I mean, Dee Ford, I don't think he's particularly good at anything other than his get off and his initial rush. I don't think he's particularly great at containing. So if that's what you're trying to do on defense, Ebukam should be terrific. I'm curious to see what he can do. I think he's going to be really good. I think that was their money signing this year, Ebukam, not Mac.
Yeah.
Could Kinlaw be good at containing the pocket as well, since he's pretty big?
Yes.
And he doesn't try to rush?
He almost backs off. Like, he'll lose, and then he'll start like spying the quarterback. That's how we got his pick six. So he can kind of be the guy who prevents the quarterback draw up the middle. A lot of times that scramble comes right up the middle. If you have two defensive tackles who take the B gap and no one is in an A gap, then you're just parting the Red Sea for the quarterback and inviting him to run for, straight up field for a first down. So if you have Armstead in one B gap, you have Kinlaw in an A gap, I think that's how you do it. And he'd be really good since he's probably not going to get to the quarterback. He could probably try to push the pocket, and then if he doesn't get there, back off and try to knock down the pass.
That's what makes this team this year so intriguing because unlike, every year there's our story, right? But this year there's a lot of them. There's a lot of them.
Yeah.
I think we mentioned almost everybody on the team.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
That's a funny thing. I got one more person to mention since we have a roster littered with people who have a ton to prove. Not to mention the two top coaches, John Lynch. Because if this falls apart this year, he's the one that's going to be held responsible more than anyone, I would imagine. And I maybe it's legit considering he has a team full of this many question marks. Maybe this is his responsibility.
I can see what you're saying, but if they hired, so Kyle Shanahan hired John Lynch, right? Technically, right? Because he was like, hey,
yes.
I want a guy that is going to agree to what I say, right?
Yeah.
So if Kyle stays coach, he's going to want the next GM to be like that as well, right?
Yeah, Kyle will just get more power in that case. Because right now it's like I want to pick the players. I just want someone to do the talking for me and do all the stuff I don't want to do. Right?
Maybe he'll stick by John, though, because it seems like when somebody's his guy that he chooses, because think about it. When Robert first came in, everybody was calling for Robert's head after year one, and Kyle stuck by him, didn't let go of him. And it seems like maybe when guys are his guys, he's going to hold on to them longer, unless it's becoming more of an issue where it's clear, to
That's a good
himself.
Point.
But it seems like his guys.
Look at another way, though.
Yeah.
I think if he could have in 2017, he wouldn't have hired a general manager. He would have hired himself and taken both jobs and made himself vice president. That's what his dad did in Denver eventually. And the reason he didn't do that is probably Jed wouldn't let him. He was 37 years old. He lost the Super Bowl, and he probably couldn't command that type. So he's like, all right, well, I'll bring in a general manager, but I still want to pick the players. But we have to have someone like a figurehead so people don't ask too many questions and think I have too much power. If they get rid of – he could look at it as this is an opportunity to get the power I wanted all along. Or – maybe he really is a loyal dude. I don't know. Good question.
Yeah, I also think from Jed's perspective, John Lynch is pretty much like I can't think of another person that would fill that role that has. He talks. Everyone respects him. He talks well. He's like that, all-American, wholesome guy.
Yeah,
he
that does represent the team really well. He not just street cred, but integrity. He is a stand-up guy. He doesn't have to lie. He seems to represent the team well. He's a Hall of Fame player. He went to Stanford. And Joe Staley really, really, really loves him. So I think it's in their interest to make it work with him. I think it's a good balance between him and Kyle.